Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I whispered those words to myself, a ritual to steady my trembling hands, to anchor my spiraling thoughts. But tonight, my voice quivered, barely audible over the pounding of my heart. I was a mess, a tangled knot of emotions unraveling with every breath. I needed to tell you about something so raw, so unexpected that it shattered the fragile peace I'd clung to for years. You might not believe me, but I swear every word is true. It all began with a single jarring sound, a phone buzzing in the stillness of the night, a sound that set my world ablaze with a fire I didn't know I could feel. I'm Elise, 38, living in a sleek, modern apartment in the heart of Seattle, where the city's neon glow filters through my floor-to-ceiling windows, casting jagged shadows across the hardwood floors. The air always carries the faint scent of rain and coffee, a reminder of the bustling streets below. I've built a life here, one I thought was unshakable, married to Nathan, 40, for 15 years, a man whose steady presence once felt like my safe harbor. But lately, I'd been drowning in a quiet storm of my own making. I'd been battling a creeping sense of unease, a gnawing doubt that whispered in the back of my mind whenever Nathan was away. He'd been distant, his late nights at the office stretching longer, his laughter rarer. I told myself it was just work stress, but the doubt clung to me like a shadow, cold and unyielding. That night, I was sprawled on the plush velvet couch in our living room, a glass of Merlot in my hand, the ruby liquid catching the dim light of a single lamp. It was past 1 a.m., far too late to be awake, but sleep wouldn't come. The apartment was silent, save for the distant hum of the city and the soft patter of rain against the windows. I'd draped a silk throw over my shoulders, the fabric cool against my skin, but it did little to ease the restlessness that churned in my chest. Nathan had been out with his best friend, Marcus, 39, for hours. They'd been inseparable since college, two halves of a whole, always laughing, always sharing stories I could never quite be part of. I liked Marcus, I really did. He was charming, with a crooked smile that could light up a room, and a warmth that made everyone feel at ease. But there was always something about him, a flicker of mystery in his hazel eyes, a depth I could never quite reach. I took another sip of wine, the tart warmth spreading through me, when the door clicked open, slicing through the silence like a blade. My heart jolted, a flicker of anticipation sparking in my chest. I looked up, expecting Nathan, but it was Marcus who stepped into the room, his silhouette framed by the hallway's soft glow. His dark hair was tousled from the rain, droplets clinging to the collar of his leather jacket, and his eyes, those piercing hazel eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Nathan had stumbled in behind him, his steps heavy, his laughter slurred from one too many drinks. He collapsed onto the armchair across the room, his head lolling back as he mumbled something incoherent before his breathing deepened into a drunken slumber. I set my glass down, the clink against the coffee table louder than I'd intended. "Marcus," I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be, a flush creeping up my neck as I met his gaze. "I didn't expect you to stay." He shrugged off his jacket, the movement slow, deliberate, revealing the way his black shirt clung to his broad shoulders. He stuffed his hands into his pockets, his posture casual, but there was a tension in the air, a charged current that made my skin prickle. "I didn't want to just leave," he said, his voice low, rough from the night out, a timbre that sent a shiver down my spine. "I thought, maybe we could talk for a bit." I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the edge of the throw, but I nodded, patting the spot next to me on the couch. "Sure, Marcus, what's on your mind?" He crossed the room in a few strides, his presence filling the space with a quiet intensity that made my pulse quicken. He sat down, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint scent of rain and whiskey clinging to his skin. My heart raced, a strange pull tugging at me, a mix of curiosity and something deeper, something I couldn't name. He ran a hand through his damp hair, his eyes flicking to Nathan, still snoring softly, before settling back on me. The tension in the room thickened, a smoldering undercurrent that made my breath hitch. "You ever feel like you don't really know someone?" he asked, his voice dropping to a husky murmur, each word laced with a weight that made my stomach twist. Not really? I leaned back, trying to steady myself against the sudden intensity of his words, but my mind was already racing. Of course, I replied, my voice trembling slightly, a warmth spreading through me as I spoke. Everyone has their secrets, don't they? Even the people we're closest to? Marcus let out a quiet laugh, but it was sharp, more a release of tension than amusement. Yeah, but what if those secrets are bigger than you ever imagined? What if the person you think you know isn't who you thought they were at all? My heart slammed against my ribcage, his words hitting me like a tidal wave. I'd known Marcus for years, but this felt different, dangerous even. He wasn't just talking about himself. I could feel it. There was something more, something he was holding back, and it sent a chill down my spine. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely audible, a flicker of dread igniting in my chest. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer, but the curiosity burned hotter, pushing me past the boundaries of caution. Marcus shifted, turning to face me fully, his knee brushing against mine. A fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me, a heat pooling in my core that I couldn't ignore. His eyes darkened, a storm brewing in their depths, a flicker of something primal, something raw. I guess I just think there are things we don't talk about, he said, his voice lower now, a sultry edge that made my skin tingle. Things we bury so deep we don't even know they're there, and when they come out, well, it changes everything. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, his words wrapping around me like a vice, suffocating me with their weight. What was he getting at? What was he trying to tell me? I leaned in, drawn to the intensity of his gaze. My breath shallow, my body humming with a mix of fear and an unspoken longing I didn't dare acknowledge. Marcus, I started, my voice trembling, unsure how to proceed. What are you trying to say? He held my gaze for a moment longer, and in that moment, I saw something that startled me. A flicker of vulnerability, a rawness that made my heart ache. He was holding on to something he couldn't keep to himself any longer, and I knew, deep down, that what he was about to say would shatter everything I thought I knew. I'm talking about Nathan, he said, his words soft but sharp, slicing through the air like a blade. There's something about him. Something I've never told you. My heart plummeted, a cold dread washing over me as I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. Nathan, my Nathan, the man I'd built a life with, the man I'd loved for 15 years, was hiding something? We'd had our struggles, sure, but there were no secrets between us. Or so I thought. Marcus, what are you saying? I asked, my voice cracking, betraying the panic rising in my chest. What's going on? He exhaled sharply, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that felt almost too much to bear. I don't know how to say this, Elise, he said, his voice rough, a tremor of regret beneath the surface. But Nathan's been hiding something from you, something he's been carrying for a long time, and I think you deserve to know the truth. My mind raced, 1,000 thoughts crashing through me at once. What could Nathan be hiding? Why was Marcus telling me this now, in the dead of night, with the city's neon glow casting an eerie light across his face? The room seemed to grow colder, the faint sound of Nathan's breathing a cruel reminder of the life I thought I knew. I couldn't help but feel a tightness in my chest, as if everything I'd built was suddenly being questioned, examined under a harsh, unforgiving light. Marcus's voice broke through the silence, softer this time, but no less heavy. It's not my place to say, he murmured, his gaze dropping to the floor, a shadow of guilt crossing his features. But I think you need to hear it from him. I think you need to know. I won't tell you more. You have to ask him yourself. The weight of his words hung between us, a suffocating silence that pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what he'd just revealed, but the question lingered in the air, unanswered. What was the secret my husband had been hiding? The silence in the room felt unbearable, Marcus's words echoing in my mind like a haunting refrain. I glanced at Nathan, still deep in sleep, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. My mind raced, torn between confronting him now and waiting for the right moment. But what if there was no right moment? What if Marcus was right? What if Nathan had been hiding something all along? I stood up, the silk throw slipping from my shoulders as I began to pace the room, my bare feet silent against the hardwood. My thoughts were a jumbled mess, each one more distressing than the last. Was Nathan having an affair? Was there something in his past he'd never told me about? My pulse quickened, 1,000 scenarios playing out in my mind, each one more devastating than the last. Marcus watched me, his expression a mix of concern and resignation, but I couldn't look at him. His involvement in this, the way he was holding back, felt like a betrayal, even though he claimed to be looking out for me. He knew more than he was willing to admit, and that uncertainty gnawed at me, a sharp, relentless ache. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I turned to face him, my voice barely a whisper. "Marcus, what does Nathan have to do with this? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He let out a long breath, rubbing the back of his neck, his movements tense, almost pained. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you," he said, his voice low, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "It's not easy, you know. Nathan's been through a lot, and I don't know if it's my place to drag all that out into the light. But you deserve to know. He's my best friend, and I can't keep something this big from you." I shook my head, still reeling, the room spinning around me. "But why now?" I demanded, my voice breaking, a flush creeping up my cheeks as I fought to keep my composure. "Why tell me at all if it was so bad? Why wait until the middle of the night?" Marcus's eyes softened, a flicker of regret crossing his features. "Because it's been eating at me," he admitted, his voice raw, a smoldering intensity in his gaze that made my breath hitch. "Seeing you with him, knowing what I know, I can't just sit back and watch you go through this without any answers. I don't want to see you hurt, Elise." His words hit me like a wave, a rush of warmth flooding my chest despite the storm inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but it was impossible. There were too many unanswered questions, too much hanging in the balance. I couldn't help but wonder if Marcus was trying to protect me, or if there was more to his story than he was letting on. "Do you think I should confront him now?" I asked, my voice trembling, a flicker of fear in my chest as I met his gaze. Marcus didn't answer right away, his gaze drifting to the floor, his brow furrowed with thought. "I think you should," he said finally, his voice soft but firm, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "But I also think it might change everything. It's a lot to take in, and you'll need time to process it. You have to decide what you want to do with this, but I don't think you can just pretend nothing's wrong." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words settle over me like a heavy cloak. The idea of confronting Nathan, of digging into something that might tear us apart, was terrifying. But the longer I waited, the more I felt like I was running from the truth, and I couldn't keep doing that. I needed answers. Before I could speak again, Marcus stood up, his expression unreadable, a shadow of regret in his eyes. "I'm going to head out," he said, his voice low, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "I've said all I can, and now it's up to you. Just take care of yourself, okay?" I barely nodded, too lost in my thoughts to respond properly. He gave me one last lingering look, his hazel eyes searching mine, a flicker of something unspoken passing between us, a heat, a pull, a whisper of something more that I couldn't ignore. Then he slipped out the door, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the night and the growing storm inside my chest. I walked back to the couch, sinking down onto the cushions, my hands trembling as I pulled the silk throw around me. My thoughts circled, each one more disorienting than the last. Was Marcus right? Was there really something I didn't know about my own husband? Had I missed the signs? Was I so blind to the man I shared my life with? The room seemed to close in on me, the city's neon glow casting an eerie light across the walls. I glanced at Nathan, his steady breathing a cruel reminder of how things used to be. Peaceful, simple, undisturbed. But now, it was as though a cloud had settled over everything, and I couldn't see anything clearly. The soft sound of Nathan's voice broke through my thoughts, a sleepy mumble that made my heart lurch. "What's going on, babe?" he murmured, his eyes still closed as he shifted on the armchair, rubbing his face. He sat up slowly, blinking at me, his expression softening with concern. "You okay?" I froze, my stomach twisting into knots, a cold dread washing over me. For a brief moment, I thought about telling him everything, spilling the words that Marcus had left me with, demanding the truth. But the words wouldn't come, my throat tight with fear. How could I bring up what Marcus had said when I didn't even know the truth myself? It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of what would happen if I stepped forward. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile, but it felt hollow, a mask I couldn't hold for long. Just couldn't sleep. Nathan blinked at me, his brow furrowing, a flicker of worry in his blue eyes. "You're sure? You look off." I nodded again, unable to find the right words, my heart pounding in my chest. What was there to say? How could I explain that everything was suddenly shifting beneath me, that I wasn't sure how to hold on to the life I thought I knew? I couldn't. Not yet, not until I understood it better. For a moment, Nathan just stared at me, his eyes searching mine, but I quickly looked away, unable to hold his gaze. The tension was thick, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me, and I could feel it in my bones. He didn't know what I knew, not yet, and I didn't know how to tell him. Finally, he stood up, stretching, his movements slow, almost hesitant. "Well, I'm going to bed," he said, his voice soft, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "You coming?" I gave him a tight smile, my hands trembling beneath the throw. "I'll be in a bit," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, still looking at me like he wanted to say something more, but he didn't. He turned and walked down the hallway, his footsteps fading into the silence, leaving me alone with my thoughts once more. I stayed where I was, sitting in the dimly lit room, my mind racing. The weight of the secret pressed down on me, suffocating me with its uncertainty. I didn't know what Marcus had meant. I didn't know what Nathan had done, if anything, but I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of something I couldn't ignore. I had to find out the truth, no matter where it led me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no idea just how much my world was about to change. The night stretched on, each minute heavier than the last. I lay awake in bed, the soft rustle of sheets the only sound breaking the stillness. Every little noise felt like an intrusion on my thoughts. How could I go on pretending everything was normal? I could hear Nathan's steady breathing beside me, and it made the quiet more unbearable. The love I had once felt seemed overshadowed by this gnawing sense of betrayal, but the truth was I didn't know anything for sure. Not yet. I turned over, glancing at the clock on the nightstand. It was nearly 3 a.m. My body felt exhausted, but my mind wouldn't let me sleep. I thought back to Marcus's words. "You deserve to know." But what did that even mean? What could Nathan be hiding? Was it something I could ever forgive? Or was it something that would forever change how I saw him? I had to talk to him. There was no other choice. If I let this go on, it would destroy me from the inside. I had to face the truth, whatever it was. The thought of confronting him terrified me, but I couldn't keep running from it. I couldn't go on like this. Slowly, carefully, I slipped out of bed, trying not to disturb Nathan. I grabbed my robe from the chair and wrapped it tightly around me, the silk cool against my skin. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, and I felt the weight of my decision hanging in the air like a thick fog. I tiptoed down the hallway to the kitchen, where the faint light of the city slipped through the windows, casting a pale glow across the counter. I needed time to think, to gather my courage. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water, the simple act feeling monumental in the moment. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not when I knew something was so wrong. Just as I was about to sit down at the kitchen table, I heard a creak from behind me. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat, a cold dread washing over me. I turned slowly, my breath catching as Nathan stood in the doorway, his eyes heavy with sleep but guarded, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression. "Can't sleep either?" he asked quietly, his voice rough with sleep, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. I stood still, the glass feeling suddenly too heavy in my hand. His gaze searched mine, as if he was trying to read me, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. I opened my mouth, but no words came out, my throat tight with a lump I couldn't swallow. How could I tell him what I knew, what I suspected, without completely destroying everything? I stammered, unable to finish the sentence, the words locked behind a wall I couldn't break through. Nathan took a few cautious steps toward me, his face softening, a flicker of concern in his blue eyes. "Hey," he said gently, his voice a soothing balm that only made my heart ache more. "You're freaking me out. What's going on?" I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the glass, my hands trembling as I fought to keep my composure. "Marcus told me something tonight," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper, a flush creeping up my cheeks as I spoke. Nathan's expression shifted immediately, a flicker of fear passing over his face, his jaw tightening. "Marcus," he repeated, his brow furrowing, a sharpness in his tone that made my stomach twist. "What did he say?" I met his gaze, but I didn't answer immediately, the silence stretching between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, I spoke again, my voice trembling, betraying the fear and vulnerability I'd been holding back for so long. Marcus said, "He said you're hiding something from me, something big." For a moment, Nathan just stared at me as if he couldn't quite process what I'd just said. His face paled slightly, and I saw his body stiffen, the weight of my words settling over him like a heavy cloak. "Wait, what do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp, defensive, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "Why would he say something like that?" "I don't know," I said, my voice breaking, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "But it's eating at me, Nathan. I can't just keep pretending everything is fine when I don't even know what's going on. What is it? What is this secret?" Nathan's eyes flicked to the floor, his expression unreadable, and I could feel the tension building between us, the air in the room growing thick with unspoken truths. I didn't want you to find out like this," he murmured, his voice lower now, almost regretful, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "I didn't want to hurt you." My heart skipped a beat, a sense of dread settling deep in my chest, a cold shiver running down my spine. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath, my hands trembling as I set the glass down on the counter. Nathan took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving mine, and in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. "It's about Marcus," he began, his voice low, hesitant, a tremor of regret beneath the surface. "There's something you don't know, something he's been keeping from you too." I felt a chill run down my spine, my stomach twisting with anxiety. "What do you mean? What has Marcus been hiding?" Nathan's face hardened, his eyes narrowing, a flicker of something dark in his expression. "It's not just me. It's us. It's all of us. And if you really want to know the truth, then we need to talk about everything. But you might not like what you hear." The air around us felt electric now, thick with the weight of unspoken truths and uncharted territory. My heart pounded in my chest, a cold dread washing over me as I waited for him to continue. I could see the struggle in his eyes, as if he was trying to find the right way to tell me something that might shatter everything we had. "Tell me," I said, my voice steady now, despite the turmoil I was feeling, a flicker of determination in my chest. "Tell me everything." Nathan took another deep breath, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Marcus and I," he began, his voice low, a tremor of regret beneath the surface. "We've been more than just friends for a long time. We've had a lot of history, and I know it's hard to hear, but it's not what you think." The words didn't immediately register in my mind, my thoughts racing to make sense of what he was saying. History? More than just friends? Was I hearing him right? I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest, a cold dread washing over me. "What do you mean, more than just friends?" I whispered, my voice barely above a whisper, as if saying the words aloud would make it all real. Nathan closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if steeling himself for something, a flicker of pain crossing his features. When he opened them again, there was a deep sadness in them, but also a sincerity I hadn't seen before. "Hey, Mikael." "We've had a complicated relationship," he said quietly, his words cutting through the air with a kind of finality. "It wasn't supposed to go beyond friendship, but it did, and I've carried the guilt of it all these years, not just for me, but for you too. I didn't want to hurt you." I felt my knees weaken beneath me, and I grasped the edge of the counter for support, my mind racing to process what Nathan had just confessed. The betrayal wasn't just about something he had done. It was about something he had kept hidden from me for years. The weight of his secret, of his guilt, pressed down on me, suffocating me as I tried to breathe through the shock. "So all this time, you and Marcus—" I couldn't even finish the sentence, the words feeling foreign in my mouth, a cold dread washing over me. Nathan nodded, his eyes full of regret, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "It wasn't an affair, not in the way you're thinking," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "We were never physical, but we shared something more emotional, something I couldn't explain. It was a bond that went beyond friendship, but it was also a mistake. I ended it a long time ago, tried to forget it, tried to bury it, but I couldn't escape it." I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me, as if everything I thought I knew had suddenly been pulled out from under me. My breath hitched, a sharp pang of pain in my chest as I struggled to hold it together. What was I supposed to feel? Anger? Betrayal? Or was it something more complicated like sadness and disbelief? "I didn't want you to find out like this," Nathan continued, his voice trembling, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how, and I didn't want to lose you." The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, and I wiped my face with the back of my hand, trying to keep the sobs from escaping. It wasn't just the truth that hurt. It was the years of trust that had been broken, the love I thought was built on something solid now feeling fragile and uncertain. I didn't say anything for a long moment, just stood there, absorbing the gravity of what Nathan had confessed. My mind screamed at me to run, to leave, to never look back, but something deeper inside me held me in place, a part of me still tethered to the man I had once loved so completely. "I need time to think," I finally whispered, my voice hoarse and raw, a warmth spreading through me as I spoke. "I don't know what to feel right now. I just need time." Nathan stepped closer, his face full of desperation, a flicker of fear in his blue eyes. "I understand," he said, his voice soft, a warmth in his tone that made my heart ache. "I didn't expect you to forgive me right away, but please, don't leave. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." I shook my head slowly, the tears still streaming down my face. "I don't know if you can," I said, my voice breaking, a flush creeping up my cheeks as I spoke. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." The words stung, but they were the truth. My heart ached with the realization that things could never be the same. The trust we had built, the life we had created, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But still, a part of me held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild, if we were both willing to put in the work. I walked past Nathan, my footsteps echoing through the silent apartment as I made my way to the living room. I sank down onto the couch, wrapping my arms around myself for comfort. The silk threw a cold comfort against my skin. The world outside seemed distant, unreal, as if it had nothing to do with me anymore. I sat there, staring out the window, my thoughts swirling. The night had turned cold, and I felt the chill settle deep into my bones. What now? What came next for us? Could I ever forgive him? Could I ever trust him again? Time passed, but it didn't heal anything. It just gave me space to think, to reflect on everything we had been through, everything I thought we had. And as the days went by, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could hold on to the past, to the anger and the hurt, or I could try to move forward, with or without him. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time, a lot more time than I ever thought it would. I just hoped Nathan was willing to give me that time. And in the end, I knew one thing. I couldn't move forward unless I found peace within myself. And that, I realized, would take more time than I ever imagined.